we're so used to Google, where you just type something in and you get an answer. We want to see AI as a Google, and that's really not taking advantage of what it can do. What AI is really good at is making you a superhuman version of yourself.
Welcome to the Tippie Leads podcast. Stories from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business that will change the way you work and lead. I'm your host, Nick Westergaard. I teach at Tippie and lead our Story Lab program. This podcast provides another opportunity to share stories from Tippie with our community and beyond. Each season of Tippie Leads, we focus on a grand challenge in today's changing world of work. This season, we're looking at artificial intelligence. From hiring and HR to finance and strategy, AI is everywhere. But beyond the headlines, how is it really shaping our daily work habits? And how do we keep up without getting overwhelmed? In this episode, we start with Tippie's Carl Follmer, who shares insights on how AI is changing the way we work, learn, and communicate. Then we'll hear from Tippie students about how they're already using AI in their day-to-day routines. And finally, we'll wrap everything up with a final Tip E just for you. Ready? Let's get started. Carl Follmer is the director of the Frank Business Communication Center at Tippie, an associate professor and assistant department executive officer. He specializes in communications curriculum across undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs. Carl teaches business communication and professionalism and communication with AI and business tech. Carl's work focuses on helping students and professionals communicate more clearly and effectively. And now, more than ever, that includes understanding how AI tools like ChatGPT are changing our daily habits. So, Carl, you lead the Frank Business Communication Center at Tippie, and I want to start by having you explain a little bit about what the Frank Center is, because it's something that is certainly an innovation at Iowa that others might not know about.
Yeah, the Judith R. Frank Business Communication Center started in 2006, and it was really an offshoot of the original accounting writing program that started at Tippie in 1998. Our advisory board for the Department of Accounting had told the department leadership, hey, Tippie accounting graduates are really smart, but they are really struggling to communicate through writing. So anything you could do to help them with that would be great. And gradually, as time went on, we started having more and more writing assignments and more classes. And we needed some sort of resource for our students to be able to use, particularly when we developed an undergraduate business communication class, so that they could have success on their assignments and learn how to develop these career and life-changing communication skills that we're fostering. So in 2006, the Frank Center was started. It was the first business communication center in the Big Ten, and it's become so much more than just sort of a tutoring center. We now sponsor assignments in more than 40, 50 classes throughout Tippie at the undergraduate, master's, PhD levels. We work with faculty on their assignments. We work with faculty on their research. We've got our hands on all sorts of different things. So the Frank Center is this dynamic and engaging place for all who are interested in working on their writing, presentations, slide design, data visualization, you name it. We're here to help.
So as we talk about how the Frank Center has evolved, and certainly communication itself has evolved, even as you mentioned, from writing to presentations. And now we have the focus of our season here on Tippie Leads of AI. So talk to me a bit about that inflection point, that huge development showing up at your doorstep a couple of years ago.
So yeah, I mean, we're all dealing with this. It was fall of 2022, and all of a sudden, ChatGPT and follow-on models became freely and openly accessible to the public, and it changed how we thought about education, about writing, about thinking, critical thinking, about process design. And we made a decision pretty early on at Tippie to lean into this technology and not try to resist it or fight the future. And the phrase that we've been using this entire time has been ethical and effective. And so that's been kind of our framework, is both on the faculty side and on the student side, to use AI and to teach students how to use AI in an ethical and in an effective way. And so, as you can imagine, with each iterative development of AI, with each new model that comes out, we've had to tweak and adjust our pedagogy and how we talk with today's students and tomorrow's business leaders about AI.
I think that's so important. And one thing that I love that we talked about a bit in preparing for this conversation was your own story kind of coming to AI, because I will confess to having a similar one. And I think it might be helpful for folks to hear as they think about how they use AI in their work.
So I'm originally from the liberal arts, which is really amazing, contains really amazing disciplines. I got all of my degrees from the University of Iowa. But the problem is that sometimes in some of these fields, things get stuck in how education has always been done. And it was really tempting to look at the oncoming freight train of AI and say, hey, you know what, we're just going to keep on keeping on. We're not really going to change what we do, because the foundational principles of what we teach are still important. And it's true. They are still important. But we still need to get this point across to students about the balance between good pedagogy and what can actually happen in reality. And so it wasn't necessarily kicking and screaming that I entered, but it was more of just kind of this acknowledgement of, yeah, we're going to have to face this. We're going to have to work this into what we do, because we owe it to our students to prepare them for the business world, for the working world, and to be professionals, and people who can utilize resources in a way that's going to benefit them and benefit their employers. So I was asked if I could create a class that I teach in our MBA program called Communicating with AI and Business Technology. And this class kind of grew out of this frustration that I had before AI had become publicly available, where I was seeing students using programs like data visualization programs and not fact checking them, not really noticing when the program was making some sort of terrible error. That, yes, the calculation was correct, but for instance, this example that I love to show to our students is, what not to do, is this heat map where it's lined up all of the months, and the months aren't lined up though, January to December, or the hottest month to the coldest month on the heat map. They're lined up in this weird order, and you can't figure out what happened. And then you realize as you look at it that the program lined the months up alphabetically. So you're looking at the alphabetization of numeric data. And so it means nothing. And so I approached AI with this sort of mindset of humans need to do what humans do best when it comes to these programs, and to utilize their higher level thinking skills. And it's scary because we hadn't been doing that before AI. And now the challenge is we need to be doing that even more so. We've leveled up without really qualifying for the level up.
So an interesting point there on being effective and accurate. I use it to help prepare for podcast conversations like this one. And I took some of our email conversations and added it in. And it was off to a good start, but as one does, I was iterating with it, and midway through, it forgot that I was interviewing Carl Follmer at Tippie and thought that I was preparing to talk to Tom Gruca, who we had on last season. So I don't know if it scoured the internet and found the Tom episode. But so as we talk about offloading tasks to AI, is there a mental checklist that you recommend for students that professionals might think about as well, on considering if a task is AI ready?
So I come to this from the communications background. most of my teaching is, and the faculty that I supervise, they all teach business communication as well. And I came up with this model about how to look at the actual content that an AI produces, that the GPT produces, I should say, for writing, and so I'd be happy to go into that. But I think in terms of like a larger perspective, we need to be thinking about what our work processes are, and what we do on a daily basis that we would actually really like if it could be shipped off to someone or something else. And in the past, we would have to wait until the pressure would build, and our release valve would essentially be to go to our supervisor and say, you need to hire somebody else. You need to hire another person. And that was always, the most unrealistic of conversations. But to take those tasks now and say, can AI do this? Should AI be doing this? Can I convince my supervisor that AI can do this and should be allowed to do this? And to just occasionally check in. Is this something that can be done under the current parameters of what AI is capable of doing? And if it is, great. And if it's not, how will you know when that moment arrives? So there's a lot of introspective thinking about what you need to do as a professional and as a person in your personal life, and thinking about what you have taken for granted that are tasks for you versus something that could actually be sort of shipped off. And we've been doing this with personal assistants for a while, and you no longer need to make your own grocery list. You just tell Alexa, this is what you want on your grocery list. And so it's sort of a similar process, but to an exponential degree.
So I feel like conversations like this invite kind of some existential reflection, because you and I both work in and around communication and writing, and we would do so because we enjoy the task. But there are many that think, I don't want to, spending a morning writing something is one of my least favorite things. So how do we look? Is there a danger of losing ourselves, losing our voice at work if we are outsourcing tasks that are so often packaging who we are at work and sending that to others, if that's being outsourced to AI?
I mean, that's a terrific question, because so if you look at Ethan Mollick, who is a really terrific scholar, and understands both the academic world and also the AI side of things, he talks about that each individual, each professional needs to engage in 3 sleepless nights where you are dealing with these problems and trying to find this balance and the answers to that questions and how that pertains to you in your circumstance. And it takes 3 sleepless nights, maybe not, hopefully not consecutively, but and the answer to your question is going to be highly dependent on who you are and what you want to accomplish and what those tasks are. So what I alluded to earlier in terms of the model that I've created of looking at AI output and determining if it's going to work and what changes that you need to make, I actually call it the change model. And the G and the E of the change is goal and end game. So the goal is the short-term goal that you want to accomplish as a result of this interaction with this other person that perhaps you're using AI to write an email towards, or design a short report or something like that. Yeah, you can accomplish a short-term goal if you want to be really manipulative, if you want to burn that bridge, and they'll be like, fine, take what you want. I never want to work with you again. But that doesn't help you with your E, which is the long-term end game. So can you use AI to accomplish both your short-term goals and your long-term end games with the people that you're interacting with? Because you don't want to lose your soul on the altar of efficiency and ease. So we all are having to find this balance of keeping our voices, keeping our cognitive functioning high enough that we're not just offloading onto AI, while still being able to take advantage of the promise that it offers.
So, we're kicking off the season talking about AI work habits. As you think about how we use and are starting to use more AI in our daily routines, is there an example of a healthy habit for integrating AI into one's work?
So I'll give you an example that has worked for me that I think would carry over to a lot of our listeners, and that is, I will come up with a process uh, in my in my role, it's coming up with like an activity that I want to roll out into a classroom, but I could see that in another person's role, it might be an agenda for a meeting, or it might be instructions that you're giving to a new hire or something along those lines. And so I'll come up with those procedures for this activity in the classroom, and I'll ask, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever I'm using, to look for areas where things could be more clearly explained, to look for areas where people might get confused, for areas where like people who are neurodivergent might actually, start like it could make things more difficult for them. So trying to find the blind spots and the assumptions that I'm making in the things that I'm already designing is a terrific way to start to get to know these programs a little bit. We think about them sometimes in terms of like, we're so used to Google where you just type something in and you get an answer. We want to see AI as a Google. And that's really not taking advantage of what it can do. What AI is really good at is making you a superhuman version of yourself. So instead of having AI crank out that email for you, why don't you write that email and just bang that thing out in 10 seconds and it's a total mess. You've never sent it to anybody. Then you give it to AI and say, this is what I want to say. Work with that to create this. That's a superhuman version of yourself. And then you can proofread that and you're ready to go. So that's my best guidance, is to figure out for each individual what that looks like to become more than what you would normally be able to be.
As we talk about habits and daily use, or weekly or monthly, is time the right way to look at how we spend time on AI, or is it what we're doing there?
I really hate to talk about it this way, but I'm going to. You, with the exception of your spouse, you don't really measure relationships in more than in time. You measure relationships in terms of your experience and the trust that you build. And as much as I hate to talk about AI and my interactions with it as in terms of a relationship, uh, there is an element of experience and trust that you have to build. Now, the challenge is, as we just saw with ChatGPT 5 coming out, that like you start to build trust, you start to feel like you know what you're doing with this. And then all of a sudden, it's like you meet up with a friend again, and they're like I wouldn't say a totally new person, but they're a person who sounds kind of the same, but can do all of this other cool stuff. They learned how to skateboard and speak Japanese in the last 2 weeks since you talked to them. And you're like, oh, okay, all right, sure, fine. Let's see what we can do with that now. So I think that, yeah, time is not necessarily the way to, that we want to think about this. It's more what you need to start developing trust. I think a really good analog is with driverless cars. That this first step that we see with a lot of driverless car companies, or what we're seeing with Tesla right now, it's driverless, but there's still a human behind the wheel because people are afraid to get in the car if there's no human there. And Waymo is doing totally driverless. We're in this funny transition period where we're like, are we comfortable with AI if there's a human in the loop? We seem to be. But are we comfortable AI when we remove the human from the equation? And that's where we're starting to, we haven't gotten there yet as a society. So we need to be thinking about in terms of trust and experience, and not necessarily in terms of time.
So you go out of your way to say that you're not a futurist per se, but you spend a lot of time with undergraduate students who this is what they know as they are developing as communicators. And as we think about professional use, what are you kind of keeping your eye on as this rapidly moving technology continues to unfold?
The thing that I'm really excited about is these conversations where we're able to say, you know what, we have been doing this the same way for a really long time. We don't need to. We came to an inflection point when AI was able to, about a year ago, start remembering conversations and referring back to those, so that it wasn't that each AI interaction was afresh and you had to provide that context. Now you can sort of relation build. I did air quotes there, relation build with the AI. I think I think another inflection point will be when AI, and it's starting to do this, when they start to ask you follow-up questions for clarification. I'm always really encouraged when AI is asking me follow-up questions for clarification. Sometimes you have to sort of tell your AI program, I want you to ask follow-up questions if you're not clear. I want you to not be sycophantic and just tell me what I want to hear until I'm so overwhelmed with your concern and empathy that tears come to my eyes. Like I right now we kind of have to prompt it to do that. Eventually it will kind of come around to delivering all of this in a much more natural way. And what we're experiencing right now is growing pains. And I honestly don't know where this stops, where it goes. But I'm excited about the opportunities that it affords, particularly in the classroom with education, to develop these lifelong skills that we want our students to have.
Hearing from Carl makes it clear that AI isn't just a tool for the future. It's here now, reshaping how we manage tasks, write, and even think. But how does that play out day to day? To answer that, we headed to the BizHub at Tippie, where students shared how they're using AI right now, from studying and writing to job prep and beyond. Here are some of the answers that I got when I asked, how are you using AI?
I use AI to help me with my schoolwork. I use ChatGPT, and sometimes it helps me get ideas, or it helps give me the right answer.
I use AI to double check my answers. Like, I try and do them by myself before, but especially if assignments are graded for accuracy, I want to make sure I can get a 100, so I'll use it as kind of a source to double check.
I typically use AI when I'm struggling with the concept, and then I kind of ask it to break down the steps for me to better understand it. In my personal life, I don't typically use it, but I guess for work sometimes when I'm curating in an email, sometimes depending on the subject, I'll run it through chat and ask if I should format it in a different way.
I use AI pretty regularly for school. It's my favorite study tool, so especially during finals, I'll upload all my notes, which I take on my computer, and it'll spit out study guides and practice questions and stuff like that for me. I typically don't use it until I'm studying for a test or a quiz or something. I'll take my notes from the slide deck in class and then upload all my notes from my Google Drive into ChatGPT, and it'll shoot out a better study guide.
So yeah, I feel like it's used for like a lot of different things, at least I try to. One of the main things I've been starting to use it for is to like make study guides. So what I'll do for like Google Gemini, I'll like upload a picture of my notes that I take in class and then basically have it format a study guide or like practice questions for me. So the study guide, like obviously just used to like study like basic vocab, definition, stuff like that. But I also like to make it practice questions, because a lot of the times like I won't get practice exams for my classes. So having it upload like 10, 15 practice questions, run through those, and then be like, can you upload 10, 15 more? And that's basically what I do for each of my classes. It's worked pretty well so far, so definitely something I'm gonna continue to do. I didn't come up with the idea to make practice questions. It was one of my buddies, and then I started doing it. I mean, I feel like people just don't realize like you can do it. Like it can do almost anything, so might as well use it to like use it as like a TA or something. Like another thing Google Gemini does is like you can have it like if you get like the pro subscription, like you can have it talk to you. So like it's kind of like going to like in office hours, like we'll have it be like run through these notes, and it'll just like run through it and explain everything. Basically just another study tool is basically how I would describe I use AI.
So over the summer and the spring, I did 2 internships. I took the whole spring semester off, and I feel like I really leveraged AI, and I used Copilot just to form my emails, and I had an accounting internship specifically, so a lot of those accounting equations, I would kind of look up, and then like when forming emails with coworkers or stuff like that, I would kind of put in what I wanted to talk about and kind of make it into a more professional language. So that's how I did that. I use it to make checklists. Sometimes I put all my assignments from Icon, and I put it in there, and it gives me like the dates and gives me like a weekly checklist and stuff like that. I don't think I would say I use it in my daily life, more so school and work.
That was a glimpse of how Tippie students are integrating AI into their work and learning. Some pretty creative and useful ideas. Before we wrap up, let's go back to Carl Follmer one last time for a final tip-e for you to remember in your work.
Think about what you would love to offload onto something else. And then the best part that I haven't gotten to is, what would that enable you to do in your professional and personal life? If you were freed of that time, if you were freed of that burden, what would that enable you to do off of that eternal checklist that you've got going? Would it just be to plow through more, or would you be able to be doing something higher level that you simply don't have the time and energy for at this point? Because we don't want to be caught flat-footed again the way that we were in October of 2022, where everybody's just blind and trying to figure out what's going on and where to go from here. While everybody else is doing that, you want to be the person that says, I've been waiting for this moment. I now know exactly what I'm going to do. And here's me jetting off into the sunset because I now know what my capabilities are and how much further I can go.
Hearing from both Carl and Tippie students shows just how quickly AI has become part of our work habits and how much opportunity and overwhelm comes with that shift. In our next episode of Season 3, we'll continue our look at AI with new research from Tippie's Emily Campion, who studies how artificial intelligence is reshaping hiring and HR decisions. This episode of Tippie Leads was written and produced by me, Nick Westergaard, with special thanks to Carl Follmer and the Tippie students who shared their stories. To learn more about our faculty guests, their research, and more, go to tippie.uiowa.edu/Tippie Leads. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or coworker, or better yet, subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. And if you're feeling generous, consider leaving us a rating or review to help others find the show. This is Nick Westergaard signing off. On behalf of everyone at Tippie, thanks for listening, and go Hawks!
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe.